Human geography, since the era of Darwinian split into two different schools of thoughts, determinism and possibilism, which explain the relationships between human and nature. Let us begin with determinism. Determinism, also called as environmental determinism or environmentalism, is a school of thought that everything in human life is originated inevitably by geographic environment. It is an idea that focuses on the impacts of geographic environment on humans and their activities and indulgences humans subordinate to environment. This acute vision directs to environmental determinism. This concept has long history. The first attempt to explain traced back to the ancient classical period when human and his culture with reference to the influence of natural conditions were studied by Greek and Roman scholars such as Hippocrates, Aristotle, Thucydides, Xenophon and Herodotus. The geographic determinism continued to dominate the writings of Arab geographers including Al-Bathani, Al-Masudi, Ibn Akhal, Al-Idrisi and Ibn Khaldun, etc. They divided the habitable world into 7 kishwars, terrestrial zones, and emphasized the physical and cultural traits of races and the nations living in these climatic zones. The environmental determinism achieved significant impetus in Europe during the Renaissance period. This concept was strongly oved by not only geographers but also sociologists and historians. The determinism idea was validated with the new information such as geographic discoveries, voyages and expeditions to different parts of the world. The idea dominated throughout the 19th century and scholars used it to regard geography above all as natural sciences. This concept was popularly developed by Karl Ritter, Alexander von Humboldt, Friedrich Rotgel, Alan C. Semple and their followers. The subsequent geographers such as Alford, Mackinder, Chisholm, Davis, Bowman, Robert Mell, Herbertson and Griffith Taylor, etc. have interpreted the progress of societies with a deterministic approach. The scientific milieu of early 20th century was dominated by Darwin's idea, deductive approaches and an acceptance of Newtonian cause and effect relationships. The environmental determinism theme basically the documentation of the control or influence of the environment upon human society developed mostly in prevailing views in American geography. The founder of New Determinism was Friedrich Rotgel, who supplemented classical geographical determinism with elements of social Darwinism. Rotgel developed a theory of state as an organism which owed its life to the earth that was striving to seize more and more territory. Thus, early 20th century geography was dominated by the idea of environmentalism, widespread in the United States and achieved a strong support of determinism. Possibilism. In early 20th century, as a response to German environmental determinism, possibilism was emerged in France. This idea is a view geographic environment grants the prospect for a range of possible human reactions and that people substantial discretion to choose between them. By the early part of the 20th century, a sociological trend was put forward by the historian Lucien Febvre to explain the state of development of different societies and their history. This approach of interpretation of history was termed as possibilism, opposite to the deterministic approach. For the possibilists, the work of man, not the earth, and its influences are starting points. The most important is the freedom of man to choose. It was Vidal de la Blache that conceptualized the framework of the school of possibilism, and it was fully developed by Febvre in his book Geographical Introduction to History in the year 1922. According to him, man is not a passive being but an active force. The variation in the attitudes and habits creates possibilities for the human communities, which became the central focus and basic philosophy of the school of possibilism in the ideation of La Blache. The essence of possibilists' approach to the problem of relationship between man and his environment can be emphasized as nature does not drive man along a particular road, but it offers a number of opportunities from among which man is free to select. This was the idea of Blache, who mentioned nature as provided the stage and it is for man to act on it, and man is both active and passive. He also stated that nature is never more than an advisor. According to the possibilists, man makes things possible to meet the ends, and it is impossible to explain the difference in human society and the history of that society with reference to the influence of the environment, and hold that man himself brings his influence to bear on that environment and changes. The possibilism school of thought, supported by geographers, ecologists and anthropologists such as La Blache, Jean Brunes in France, Isaiah Bowen and so in the United States, the possibilists considered man as an active agent in man-nature relationships. The possibilism doctrine became so distorted that by the 1950s, and it could be seen as a threat to the scientific status of geography as an autonomous discipline. After 1950s, as a result of arguments in favor of nature determinists and possibilists, the concept of determinism became crude determinism, and the idea of possibilism became the formless possibilism. These extreme views culminated in the emergence of the ideas of neo-determinism and probabilism. Neo-determinism is also known as scientific determinism or new form of determinism, and the scientific determinism idea was conceptualized by Huntington. Griffith Taylor, an Australian-American geographer, propounded the concept of stop and go determinism in the year 1951, in which due focus was given to both man and nature. Taylor, in his book Australia, stated that man is able to accelerate, slow or stop the progress of a country's development, but he should not depart from the direction as indicated by the natural environment, and is like the traffic controller in a large city who alter the rate and not the direction of the progress. The ideation is based on the choice between wise and foolish. Therefore, neo-determinists are in assertion of Febvre that there are no necessities but everywhere possibilities, and man as a master of the range of nature's presentation. The concept of probabilism may be considered as a revised and refined form of possibilism, and it was developed in 1957 by Spate, a British geographer. According to him, although the geographic environment does not uniquely determine human activities, it does nevertheless make some action is represented as not so much a matter of an all or nothing choice or compulsion, but balance of probabilities. Spate's view can be comparable with the original Vidalian's thought of possibilism. The probabilism concept was supported by Curry, Gould and others. However, this idea not attained the enthusiastic attention of geographers like the concept of neo-determinism and cultural determinism. The study of subjects includes fundamental principles which provide separate uniqueness and serve as the cornerstone of discipline. The principle of terrestrial unity discloses interrelationships between different phenomena like physical, biological and cultural. The principle of activity is a universally identified and a fundamental concept in the study of human societies with regard to their evolution and changes over the time. The fundamental principle behind change is adaptation and adjustment in the evolving relationships between natural environment and the human beings.